Good evening, everyone. And firstly, I want to welcome you to the 14th Annual Art of Brooklyn Film Festival. Thank you for joining us and for this conversation, which I'm very much looking forward to, about virtual production. My name is Melissa D'Agostino. It's a pleasure to be here in Able Cine in this gorgeous auditorium they have with this volume back here, this LED screen, which we're going to talk about quite a bit, I believe. Not this particular one, but we will talk about the technology quite a bit tonight. And thank you to Sony, who is the sponsor of this wonderful conversation. As I said, my name is Melissa. I am a filmmaker from Canada. I'm visiting here. And thank you, a lover of Canada. I love that. I'm a filmmaker. I started my career out in the theater and then started working in post-production and television, and then started making my own short films. And then I met this gentleman here, who is my husband and also my partner in business, in art and in life, Matt Campagna, and we built a streaming service in Canada called Highball TV that is available all over the world. And a few years ago, our production arm started making some features, and we've started really experimenting with green screen and volumes and different types of technology. Matt had already done a lot of green screen work. He'll tell you about that. But that's sort of where I come into the conversation, and I'll be facilitating things, but it's going to be a very casual conversation between all of us up here. This is Matt and Sean and Maryann. They're all going to introduce themselves, so I think I'm going to pass it on to Matt now, and you can let us know who you are and why you're here.
Great, I'm Matt Campagna. I'm a filmmaker from Canada as well. And yes, Canada, proud. My background is behind the camera. I began as sort of an engineer as well as a filmmaker, and so I loved putting all the things together to make the thing work and then getting to make it work. And that led me to be every bit the writer as I had to be the director and the cinematographer and the editor and the VFX artist. And so I like the end-to-end production and how it starts and how it finishes. So for about 25 years, I've been making movies of various sizes, some independent on a credit card, some for Sony and the Sci-Fi Channel. So it's been like all over the place, the people I've gotten to work with and for and around. And so I kind of settled on independent film being the thing I love the best. And so most of what I do is very independent, and it's coming unfiltered that way, which I like a lot.
My name is Sean Mannion. I am a Brooklyn-based filmmaker. Originally I'm from Canada's neighbor, Alaska. Not quite as cool as Canada. It's got all the weather issues, but none of the healthcare. I moved to New York to become a filmmaker, and I've been doing that for about 16 years now, very much in the indie space. I've made a lot of shorts. I have a feature called Meme, and writer-director, but also have done quite a lot of post work and quite a lot of work in education. A lot of what I've done for other people is usually like some kind of post work, whether it's editing or sound or VFX or whatever I could do. Usually because I learned how to do it because I couldn't afford to pay anybody else to do it for myself. So, but yeah, that's I'm very enthusiastic about the education side of it, particularly anything that is focused on accessibility, because I do come from a place where there's not a whole lot of opportunity for this, and you got to move either to California or New York at the time, and now I guess it's California, New York, or Atlanta, or move to Canada where they have healthcare. But they won't let me in. A big part of what I've focused on a lot with education is just like how to demystify things and how to help people understand that you don't have to have all of the fancy toys to tell your story. So.
Awesome, great. Hi everyone, my name is Maryann Talavera. I'm the Assistant Director of Technology over at the NYU Tisch Martin Scorsese Center for Virtual Production. I'm also an creative technologist, and I teach XR world building at the New School. I'm an independent artist. This year I was selected as a Black Public Media Plus Fellow, and I got to participate in the Pitch Black Forum. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about using low to no cost tools to make your project. So excited to be here.
Great, thank you all. We're going to really try and cover a lot of ground between the four of us around low, no budget, working in a studio with the volume that you rent, some AI and sort of the conversation around ethics. So we're going to go all over the place. I'm going to try and keep us focused, but we're each going to share an individual sort of project or piece and take you through that, and then we'll discuss. So Matt, maybe you want to get started and talk a little bit about using an LED volume to film a car chase.
Sure. We had this car chase that we wanted to shoot that involved going basically up a mountain, across a mountain, and down a mountain. And we needed to have that car get like rear-ended by a van, and the most expensive possible things and difficult things to reset. There was a gunshot that goes off, and then a mirror goes flying. The back window of the car gets shot in. And we were doing this on not a ton of money, and we loved this car chase. So we didn't want to just cut it or hobble it or turn it into something that wasn't nearly as fun as it read. And so we realized that for the expense of like getting a process trailer and having police officers and all night only having enough time to maybe do it 3 times, we could take all that money, spend half of it to rent a 270-degree Mandalorian style volume. And so it meant if we got the footage going up, across, and down that mountain, we could chuck that up on the screen, which is a very lo-fi way of doing it. We weren't going to build it with Unreal and do anything fancy. We were going to literally drive it with a van behind the motorcycle, so it felt like all the scene's essential elements were going to be available. And then we put the Jeep in the middle of the volume, and all we would need to do is the little resets, like having a side mirror fly off, chuck some glass at the back of everyone's heads at the right time, and do it in such a way that made it feel like it was impossible to shoot. Because if you're in a process trailer, you've got the spots where you can put your cinematographer, and that's kind of it. Most uses of process trailers feel like the last time you saw people shooting a car on a process trailer. But if you want to hit the clip, we're able to do some things that made it feel a little more, and if you hit play on this guy, you get the idea of everything flying by as you'd expect. And then the cool thing about this is we're able to make camera moves very smoothly just standing on the ground. There's nothing fancy about how we're moving this camera. It's our cinematographer, our camera op, just going from one part of the completely stationary vehicle to another part of the completely stationary vehicle. And it feels like everything is just whipping by as it should. And there's the glass. That's a very difficult thing to reset. But if the car's not moving, it's a really easy thing to do. And so one of the things that actors don't particularly love about being in a scene like this, being shot practically, is that by the time you get to the end of the track, everything needs to be reset. You need to bring the actors back to where they were. You need to fix the car back up to where it was and do it again. But we were able to do 9-10 takes of this inside of 2 hours, which is unheard of. This should take all night and maybe a couple of nights. Now you could do this on a green screen with tracking markers, but then you also need to have all of the actors react to the same things, like the car spinning.
Yeah. Well, and also it gave that actor Andrew Fung, who's wonderful. It gave him the opportunity to really improvise so many reactions to spinning out.
Yeah, that was not in the script.
Yeah.
He was just like, oh, so this is really happening. Okay, and then he came up with that. So being able to give actors their environment is invaluable. And so this gave us sort of the best of both worlds, the options, all the great things you get from shooting on a green screen with complete control and using tracking markers, you could get those camera motions. But by throwing it up on the wall and letting them see what they were actually doing, it let all of them react to the same hits. It let all of them freak out as things were happening around them. And yeah, it gave Andrew the inspiration to give us exactly what we needed at the end of that scene to transition into the next one.
And can you talk a little bit about, and full disclosure, I co-directed this movie, so when I say we, that's why. But can you talk a little bit about our process of shooting the footage that ended up on the volume, on the screens, and how, because we used a certain camera and we shot it a certain way in order to achieve this look?
So yeah, because it was a 270-degree volume, we needed to get almost a 360-degree view of what was happening. So what we did was we put a very, very, very secure 360-degree camera on the back top of a motorcycle. And we whipped that motorcycle as fast as that motorcycle wanted to go, up, across, and down that mountain. Faster than you would be able to move a process trailer, faster than you would be able to move actors in a car on a process trailer. So we were able to get that speed. We were able to get the peripheral vision of things whipping by because it was a crotch rocket whipping up that mountain. So that's how we managed to, that thing could really motor.
Yeah.
And so that's how we were able to get the speed and the footage. And we wound up having to dress the set so that you could feel things whipping by. We put a lot of reflective, sort of 3.5-foot cones. We put those all the way up, across, and down this particular stretch, so that as the car behind us was driving, it would illuminate them. So the motorcycle itself wasn't throwing the light that mattered. When we were looking out the window, what was happening was essentially we were Hollywooding a lamp, but it was the headlights of the van behind us.
Mm-hmm. And this scene gets interrupted in the film by a flashback, which is what this image is from. And then we're back in the car with them, and they end up on the wrong side. Well, they end up on the train tracks, and a train is coming for them. And it was very late at night, and we weren't able to actually film what we were going to film as the sort of facsimile of that happening. And we were heading toward principal photography, and there was no way we could. So maybe you want to explain how we created that, because that's also a good. What I love about this is that it's a way that we were able to just do something, the two of us, one night, that actually saved this whole scene.
Yeah. So when you've got a first AD, they're really in charge of safety. And the least safe thing you can do is drive a car down a live train track. So he was very much against doing anything that would be, guerrilla. So rather than have the whole team, which was just a skeleton crew shooting this 360 footage, Melissa and I just went out into the darkest place near Toronto we could find and Melissa drove a car right at me as fast as she could.
We worked out some issues.
Very good trust exercise. So she would drive right at me as I was sitting there with the camera, and then she would swerve at the last minute. And this was to emulate the point of view of a car on a train track that then hops off the train track and the train goes by.
And we put a light in the dashboard, and then you flipped that image in post so that it looks like the three lights on the train.
So it doesn't look like a Kia Soul.
That's right.
It's upside down and has a third light, and nothing about it looks familiar. And so that was the trick. The Kia Soul has some interesting lights, so we rented that so we could put it upside down and make it feel like a train.
Yeah.
And then we added some other elements to it, like the moving train track. I engineered some overhead highballs. Those, which is funny that they're called highballs. But those little red lights you see that go green when a train is going under them, they usually are on an arch. That's called a highball. And so we needed to show that a train was coming this way, so they needed to all be red. So we just basically built a chunk of it in post after we had recorded 3/4 of what we needed on that motorcycle. So it was a nice combination of just running a 360 camera on a route and then adding to that the unfilmable element.
Yeah, and do you want to show the photo of, yeah, here we go. Thanks,
Oh, yeah.
Jake.
So that's what it looked like
Yeah,
when we were shooting it.
this is us on set. And what we did was we rented a Jeep where we could take off some elements of it. We wanted a Jeep where we could take off that bar as well, and that was not possible. So I think we then changed the blocking on the fly.
Yeah. So the girl sitting on the top there, her job is to pull up the actual glass at the back of the Jeep. And then the other woman with very similar hair, her job was to whip the glass in and duck. And so there is a crazy choreography of people lifting and moving and throwing things.
And this person is pulling off the mirror so that Alice has something to react to.
So yeah, there were a series of choreography. We've got a fella up here whose job it was to get completely practical with the lighting, because the thing about a volume is it'll give you a nice ambient light, but it won't give you very strong directional light. And when you're filming at night, you want to feel like things are whipping by, because there's a moment where you're going by a bunch of streetlights. So we had someone who was basically lifting and returning one light so that it felt like we were having lights move by as well. And so it was a lot of hi-fi and lo-fi all playing together to make this thing work.
It's true, yeah. There's a lot of sort of old school film techniques as well as the volume.
Because really, the volume is just like rear projection, but fancy. I
Yeah.
mean, Hitchcock was using this. It just wasn't LED.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, it's everything old is new again on this, because it's a lot of techniques that go back a long time.
And in post, what did you find you had to do to really sell some of the moments?
I wound up adding some lens flares to the car, to the actual practical van we had following up from behind, because we really wanted to sell the fact that there's one place for your eyes to go, that's where the danger is, because there's other stuff whipping by, but we wanted to really feel that what's bearing down on them is this van from behind. Because there's never a time where we could change the perspective and have like a low angle looking up shot of a van bearing down on them, because that would ruin the illusion, this feeling of all of it being done in one shot. And so to get that proximity and feel the danger of how close they are, it was feeling these lens flares getting bigger and then falling back, and then bigger and falling back. And so that was one thing that we did in post to just kind of zhuzh it up.
Yes, zhuzh it up. And then some camera shake for all the bumps really helped. And this scene, when we edited this scene, I was reminded of how sound design, sells so much for you. And so many moments where we were like, oh, we're not really buying fully this train moment. It's like the moment you have the right sounds in there coming from the right spots, it lifts it up. Yeah. We also shot another scene on this volume where people are just driving, going for a slow drive during the day. And that had other challenges of making that footage work. And the actor, we didn't know that the actor didn't know how to drive, let alone drive standard in this sports car we had rented for the character. And so Matt had to teach him basically here's what your body would look like if it was shifting gears at the right moments when the footage would stop or speed back up.
There's a key moment where the characters stop and look out a window and see a suspect in this whodunit. And because of that, it meant that he couldn't just put it into fourth gear and hang out. It had to look like he was stopping. And then it had to look like he was working his way back up to fourth gear, and he had never even driven.
An automatic car, yeah.
Yeah. It was fun to be able to do that and have him look around. If it was on a green screen, he'd have no sense of when the car was going faster or slower without someone giving him an audio cue, and then your sound designer hates you. But with this, we were able to have him see, okay, when that third tree goes by, that's when I'm going to have to slow down, because, now I'm coming to the red light. So it was, again, being able to give them what they needed around them to really feel it. And it's so cool the way, because it's a 270-degree volume, you're able to see on the reflection of this beautiful yellow that this car was, you're able to see the reflection of the passenger's view going by as well. So the illusion is in all the little hidden bits. I mean, the reason the Mandalorian, the reason the main character wears silver is just to be like, look what we can do. Because we're on a volume.
Not a green screen.
I'm
I'm not dealing with spill.
Yeah, like you could not have done that character on a green screen without making a living hell for everyone working on it. But you put him on a volume and you've got actual like spectral, all the light coming off of him is correct.
One more question in that vein, one last question around working on green versus volume with actors. I am an actor who has worked with Matt as a director on green screen quite a bit, and then we have directed together on green. And can you talk a little bit about, from your perspective as a director, what it's the difference when an actor is sitting on green looking at, you know, a C-stand with a shower cap on it and acting versus when they're, you know, able to actually react to things in the space?
Yeah, I think that the job of the director is made way easier when you don't have to paint a picture at the outset of the scene. When the picture is up on the walls for everyone to look at, and you know that you're in, you know, the suburbs, or you know that you're on a mountain, or you know that you're in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, you don't have to tell them where to look, they do it naturally. And that is a really exciting thing, because then you could just lean into directing their performance. And it's less about setting the stage, because the stagecraft is already done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really magical to watch them be able to play too and improvise and not have to worry about tracking them and not have to worry, which I know we're going to, this is my segue into into Sean, because you're going to talk to us, you're going to sort of take some of what we've discussed here and talk about how we can do this, you know, in our living room. We want to.
Yeah, so before we play the clip that I have, and I'll talk through my clip because it's not quite as exciting as a car chase. So basically at the beginning of this year, my producing partner and I were talking and saying that we really want to make something new, but we're very low, no budget filmmakers. Like and we wanted to work on a small scale and just kind of get something together. And you know, there's one thing that comes to mind is there's a lot of talk about, you know, when you want to get a feature together and you don't have much to go, like write that like one location thing. And one of the things, I'd been diving into this at a previous job that I had over the last couple of years, diving into Unreal Engine and virtual production techniques. And part of what I started thinking was, well, we can do one location, we can do one room, but that room could be anywhere because we have a pop-up green screen and I have a TV. So this reel that we're going to show, and I'll talk through, is an experiment that we did a couple weeks ago, just to make sure that I'm not crazy. Like, can we actually do some of these things? So it's some footage with using Unreal Engine. It's all shot on iPhones because that's what we had on hand, but also the iPhone can be used to control Unreal. Like literally controlling the virtual camera, because one of the things, as I said before, I've done a lot of post work, and one of the banes of my existence in post work is when somebody's like, well, you know, we want you to put something in this this tracking shot that we did not plan to have anything in it, so there's no track marks or anything like that in it. Right. Or the worst thing that ever happened one time was when somebody wanted me to composite something onto a television screen. They're like, well, there was green on the screen, and then they send me black and white footage. And I said, but do you have a color version of the footage? No. We shot it in black and white, but there was green on the screen. And I was doing somebody a favor, so I was polite after that. But so the bane of my existence has been tracking. So if I can track while I'm shooting, that is super helpful. So I've got an example of that, but also using my TV as the LED wall. So we can go ahead and cue that up. And I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna talk through it as we go. So it really starts with, this is my producing partner, Nicole. That's my TV. This is my living room. There are no other lights. The environment behind her is a free project that if you download Unreal, you can download this project. And it looks very much like, and you can kind of see me, and this is like literally the setup. Like, we did nothing other than put them in front of the TV. It helps to go through and post and like run a little processing over it. You know, taking some of the post-production techniques I've used before when working with VFX, which when I teach it, I always try to tell students, if you want it to look good, make it look bad. Because the less crisp it is, the better. And then, so you can see in the background here, and there's another shot. Actually, can we pause on this for just 1 sec? Because I'm gonna talk about this. So one of the things that we took advantage of is I am kind of Apple focused, just because I grew up on Windows and I hate it now. But one thing that happened in the last 2 months is an app that was iPhone only called Unreal VCam was finally compatible with Mac. And what this allows you to do is control the camera in Unreal with your iPhone in real time. So if I move, which we'll see in a second, we can go ahead and hit play now. If I move, and you can see in the corner here, this is literally, I was holding 2 iPhones stacked on top of each other. Mine was feeding into Unreal, the other was shooting our actress Tara there, and you can see this is the footage in Unreal, and it's moving at roughly the same time. And then we'll see the compositing. Pretty quick composite in DaVinci with this. Just the timing was just trying to line up the shots in DaVinci because I was able to export. It's another shot we did just from behind her. Again, it's just in front of that green screen, and I'm just holding 2 iPhones stacked on top of each other, panning back and forth and tilting a little bit. And our whole kind of idea behind it is those are kind of test environments that I put together for this project, and everything in those test environments, with one exception, was free. So one of the great things that I really, really appreciate about Unreal Engine and using it, and if you're unfamiliar with Unreal Engine, just to put context there, it is a game development tool that has been heavily used in film and video production. I think it first started getting used like 20 years ago when it cost something like $1,500 a year or something like that to use Unreal at all. It's been free for a while. Now, as long as you're making less than $1 million a year, it's free to use. But one of my favorite things is that there is, they've acquired a bunch of other companies. One in particular, Quixel Megascans, that just scans real-life objects and makes them 3D things. So almost everything in that environment. If you saw, you might not have seen it, it's kind of dark, but there's some animal skulls that they scanned. I kind of made them gigantic because I'm like, this is a weird fantasy world. There were giant animals, and they're dead now. But there's like dead trees, there's a bunch of rocks and stuff on the ground. Those are all just real objects that were scanned that are available for free. In the distance, there's some houses. That's from a different project that was, I think it was available for free. One of the things that they do is every month, and I'm going to probably be checking by the end of this week to see what's free this month, but every month on the Unreal Marketplace, they make some of the stuff available for free, and I just add all of those to my cart every time, whether or not I'm going to use them. I have so many things in my library right now. The only thing that isn't free and what I used in that is a plugin called Ultra Dynamic Sky, which I think only cost me like $50, maybe $20, which allows you a lot more control over the sky that you have, and a little bit more realistic, even though I made that very intentionally not very realistic with the background, but it gives you a lot of control. And so our process for it really was, and the plan is that if you've produced here in New York and you don't have a budget, if you want to do anything then anything other than shoot in somebody's apartment, shoot in a park, shoot on the street, or shoot in like a place where your friend works and they're really friendly, it's going to cost you. Like every time I've shot in a bar or a restaurant, it's because we could either get a really good deal because they were super indie friendly. All of those places have shut down. Unfortunately, it makes me sad over the years. You know, rents are hitting those guys too. Or like one of the people in the production was tight with somebody. And that's tough. And one of the things that we talked about a little bit was how much tougher that can be right now, because a lot of connections have, you know, again, if you've been here in New York the last few years, a lot of people have left and haven't come back. And so one of the advantages that we have is if we use, I don't know that we would necessarily use the subway thing, because I've certainly, you know, shot in the subway even though we weren't supposed to. Plenty of times, probably we'll just do that. But what I could do with that TV is, oh, we need an office space, but I don't need like a wide shot of this or anything like that. We just need a close-up. So we'll just, you know, maybe it's an Unreal project, maybe it's just a photo, maybe it's Photoshop, something like that. But, you know, okay, we've got a cubicle, or if we, one of the things that I've been considering about it is, oh, we need a pickup shot. We need a close-up for somebody.
Yeah.
Let's like, we need a close-up wherever it needs to be. We have a plate shot, maybe.
Yeah.
So let's just throw them in front of it and do that. And I think that literally the green screen that we have is like a pop-up thing that I bought off of Amazon several years ago. I think it cost maybe $50. And, you know, it's not amazing, but we've used it for a few things because you can get a decent medium with it. Probably if we got some green cloth and wrapped it around the bottom, we could get a decent wider shot with it with the actors. And as you saw there, like literally just having the VCam app connected to Unreal, especially because when I was actually recording the footage, it did not look like what that looked like. I like, you know, that was the export where I, you know, turned up some of the settings and made it look pretty. But when we were actually recording it, like I had it at the lowest possible render settings so that we didn't have any lag or anything like that, which is kind of an advantage over, so something we were chatting about a little bit right before we started was that these LED volumes are great, but the technology is, so the technique isn't new, but the technology is new.
Yes.
And it can be very finicky. You know, it's fantastic, it's great. This thing, the car chase thing is beautiful. Like you know, if you hadn't told me that, I probably would have been like, damn, they got like some good shots with that. How did they do that? But if there's a problem, you can lose like your whole day. And it's super smart that you guys use the what is it, 270? Yeah, the 270 camera for it, because then it's just like putting footage on the screen, which is easier to deal with for the screens than if you're running like, if I put my project on there, I'd have to optimize my project, we'd have to make sure it was rendering just right. Technically, the camera would have to be feeding in so you could have what's called a frustum, which is basically like a little cut in that's actually rendering at the highest quality wherever the camera's pointing. And that is all a lot of computing power.
Oh yeah, even when we were running just footage, they had to restart the computer like 4 times because you would see a lag and you're like, well, the road's not lagging, guys. You gotta get this going. And then they would
it's not the Matrix. It's not like a whole other movie where
we lost probably 40 minutes to like takes where partway through we saw a stutter. We're like, we gotta get that jitter out.
And especially if you're trying to do one shot, like. Which, if you're doing something like that, why wouldn't you try to do it one shot? Like that's the trick. That's the thing that you like. Otherwise, you could just do it the other way. But I think that, so when you have the budget and like the opportunity to go somewhere like that, it's fantastic. And as I said up top, a big thing for me has always been accessibility. I've been fortunate to work, to do some work in community media over the years, and like really working with people who just care a lot about telling whatever story it is, oftentimes community-focused stories, like, you know, things about like their neighborhood and the people that they live with and around here in New York. And, you know, those are important stories. Certainly more important than this thing that we're doing, my producing partner and I. I'm not going to judge anybody else's project, but more important than what we're doing. You know, it can be really, really intimidating to see the level of this technology and the price tag that comes with it.
Yes.
Just like with cameras and audio and all of that. But I think we're in a really important time for this, a really, really great time for this, because I see it, and I've used this analogy in a conversation or two here and there, that we're kind of at a point with this tech, and that's a lot like where we were as filmmakers with the 5D Mark II about 15 years ago, where, yeah, that's not a cinematic camera, but it brings brought filmmakers so much closer to that look and that feel of professionalism, and it's not an ARRI, and it's not a Red or whatever other fancy camera that you know, people would compare it to, but you could get gorgeous shots out of it. And what we're doing, it's not the same as that. It's not the same as what The Mandalorian or any of the Star Trek shows or any of the thousands of other things, almost every commercial now it seems, is doing. Yeah. But it's an intermediate step that opens up opportunity for us to create something where, honestly, like those parts in that kind of fantastical world where we're kind of putting our character in, are ideas I'm adapting from an old script that was always kind of like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this, because I wanted a character to be able to kind of go into this this horrifying sort of other world, and this just kind of opens up that opportunity. And the intermediary step allows us to, because one of the things, if you do the volume, you have to have everything when you go in.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have time to build stuff there. You might be able to tweak stuff if you're doing things in Unreal, but you come in. Your post-production is now your pre-production. The intermediary step we're in, I had most of that environment built. Tara, who's the actress there, who has put up with me for about 12 years now as an actor, I'm very lucky. She could see it. Like, my computer was, with my screens up, was like right in front of her. So she could see what that world was or was supposed to be, but it wasn't the final. It was kind of like you're looking over here, and there's some trees over here, and there's a planet off in the distance probably, and there's a giant skull. And because it's test footage, I didn't really need her to respond to anything. But most of the actual, like, making it look decent and adding some things to it was all in post. And the process was super easy. We recorded it. It wasn't just like spit it out from there, but it generated, if you do post, it generated keyframes. Mm-hmm. I just take the keyframes, copy and paste them to another camera, where I could move that camera around. I could say, oh, actually I want the perspective to be a little different. I want it a little higher, a little lower. I didn't do this right. And it's just, making a few adjustments. And then the tracking data is there. I think I needed to tweak something else. I think it thought something was upside down. Export the video, clip from it. I started the cameras at almost the exact same time. So in DaVinci, it was just kind of making a few frame adjustments. And I think they're probably off by a few frames, but I won't look at it very closely yet. But
we all noticed. No, I'm kidding.
I wouldn't blame you, and I should be kicked off the panel,
That's
honestly,
it.
for
Thank you for coming.
I screwed it up. I'm sorry. So sorry.
No, that's great, and I really appreciate you saying that part, because really, part of what we discussed and with Art of Brooklyn was like, what is really the goal of this conversation? And I think with advances in technology, there's always it's always going to be scooped up by the big players and used in ad nauseum and in very specific ways. But there's such an opportunity to use that technology as well. And now there's, as you were saying, so many free options or nearly free options that we can all play with and even use partially in our projects. And that's so exciting because it offers us as artists a kind of autonomy and the ability to play in those spaces.
And so much creativity, because it's a tool that we can now use any way we want if we have the creativity to use it in an interesting and new way. Even the big guys, if you're watching Star Trek, it's like if there's a suspicious number of 25-foot round sets, because that's what they're shooting on. You're like, oh, weird that a Vulcan Ponfar ritual takes up the same amount of space as a Breen ship, and you're like, yeah, they're all working on the same thing.
Well, and
so they're not getting super creative with it, which is why it feels under those limitations like the same circle.
Yeah.
There was an interesting conversation that I can't remember if I was actually part of it or I was just watching it. It was a little while ago. But somebody was pointing out that one of the disadvantages of these stages is they can only be as small as that LED stage
That's
is.
right. Yep.
So if you have a 60 meter wide or something like that, that is the smallest that room can be. It can't be any smaller than that. I think a lot of places have started implementing walls that they can move in that are on kind of wheels and stuff. But it's still kind of a handy thing to keep in mind. They're great when you want to do those big panoramic things, but if you're doing a small room, it's not there.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to say something. I think.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that one of the exciting things, in addition to being able to use these assets from the Unreal Market that are free, is that it kind of opens up people's imaginations to where their stories are going to take place and worlds that they can build. It's not a surprise at all that a lot of our students, their films now take place in space, because it's finally I can shoot in space. I can make this whole world. So I was just jumping off of that point.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. Yeah, and I think let's move on from there and move on to Maryann, what you wanted to talk about, because it also sort of follows what Sean was just discussing in terms of some of the tools we can use.
Yeah, so we'll talk about some very free and low cost tools. So I'm going to talk about digital humans, specifically when thinking about either creating pitch materials or previs, which is your pre-visualization. You are concerned with kind of blocking out your scene, getting on the same page with your whole creative team of what you want your shots to be. And so you can use digital humans to plan all of that out. So we can continue. Yeah. So we'll pause here. I can get by in Blender and Maya, but if you are not a full-time 3D artist, there's a lot that you can do, and there are many tools that you can use to make digital humans. DAZ, Make Human, sometimes they'll just have kind of a base human, and you can make them from there. In Unreal, you can use the mannequin if you want, just to test out different animations and block out your scene. And so we can continue. And then, of course, Unreal or Epic has their MetaHuman Creator, which is also free. And then these are paid tools. Maya, if you have an education account, you can get Autodesk for free. But there's Real Illusion and ZBrush. So it's really kind of up to you which tools work for you. And we can continue. So this was just a shot, I was just planning out certain things in Unreal. Used Fuse, which was created by Adobe to pop out those digital humans, and then found some capoeira animations online. I was working on a project. This was during the height of COVID. I wasn't going to go out and shoot anyone. I didn't have an actor. I didn't have access to a mocap studio, but I needed to have some motion capture for this project. So I used a tool. There's a website called Deep Motion. they have a tool called Animate 3D, and you can record video of, people doing whatever kind of action up until 20 seconds. So it's, very short clips, but it is free. You can have longer ones for the paid version. But yeah, so basically I was the actor and recording and did this I was like dancing bachata in my hallway. My neighbors were very confused. So you upload it, it processes it, and then gives you an animation clip that you can use. This character is also, you can tie your Deep Motion account to Ready Player Me so that you can download a more like customized free avatar. So you can continue. Sweet. I mean, if you're an independent artist, these things are great. And it's all about like blocking things out and rapid iteration, because you don't want to spend a bunch of time and money and resources figuring these things out when, for example, doing a shoot on an LED volume already costs so much money. Mm-hmm. And so you can see my Ready Player Me avatar and see the different options. Like you can take a BVH and use Motion Builder for your animation, but you can also just download the FBX and bring that into something like Unreal or Unity. And so that's my bachata. It's super janky, but that's not the point. The point is to be able to iterate quickly. That's great. And actually, if we can pause at the pyramid, because we actually worked on a green screen project using that same asset that's from Kit Bash. And yeah, I was just testing out, just kind of figuring out scale, because that, when you're shooting on a volume, that's one of the first things that you're going to figure out. You might have a city or any kind of environment. You want to figure out like what is the relation to that environmental asset to your performers. And so by using, free avatars and free motion capture, you can figure this all out quickly. And so, like I mentioned, Epic has their own digital human creation tool. It is web-based, so you don't have to download anything on your computer. Because it's meant to be used in Unreal Engine, your character is already rigged. You don't have to go through that process. So they have a skeleton that you can manipulate. You can add animations to, or you can, using keyframe animation, make your own original performances. And I've used MetaHumans for previs. I've used it for like very basic pitching. Yeah, it's just great. And then, so this is a workflow called Mesh to MetaHuman. If you want to use MetaHuman Creator, but you have a specific performer in mind, you can do this workflow where you basically create a 3D scan of their face using your phone. This is an app called Polycam. You can get, there's a paid version and there's a free version. The paid version lets you download the scan in different formats, so like FBX, OBJ. But the free version, you can download a GLB file and then take that into a DCC, like Blender or Maya, a digital content creation software. And then basically what you do is you clean up the scan, get rid of everything that isn't the head. And one thing to note, when you're scanning folks, you don't want them to have glasses, or if they have like a beard, it might interpret the beard as like part of the face. So just keep that in mind. And then we can pause here. So we were gonna do this process with this amazing actress, Laila Garoni. She's from Brazil. And ideally, I would have had a day to do the scan, get her MetaHuman ready, and then record her performance and pipe that into Unreal. We didn't have that. We had one day, and we basically had to do everything that day. So we actually had to record her performance using the LiveLink Face app, and then also do her scan on the day. I mean, it worked, but we were definitely a little bit nervous that something was going to go wrong. So you can continue. And this is for a mixed reality project called the Arisha project that I've been working on. So there she is recording her LiveLink Face app performance on my iPhone. And yeah, I was very nervous. I was like, I really hope that this works. But there's her head scan. And so I brought it into Blender and then basically cleaned up all of those polygons. And so through the Mesh to MetaHuman process in Unreal, it's basically tracking your eyes, your eyebrows, your nasolabial folds, and your lips, so that Unreal Engine understands, okay, this is a face. And then the next one you'll see, from that face, it makes this kind of metahuman identity solve. And so you get kind of like the metahuman DNA underneath that face. And so then you can send it up to MetaHuman Creator, make any little adjustments if you need to. And so that's just showing a range of motion. And then you have your character that is, you can always make your own MetaHuman, but at least this one is physically share some similarities with my actor. So if that's important to you when you're doing your previs, this is a great workflow. And so we had shown this over at Onyx Onassis and at Barnard College's Movement Lab. So that's part of the Orisha project.
Nice.
And yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I can also see how that is useful when you're trying to attach actors to a pitch or trying to get financing, because financiers and anyone like that, they have no imagination, and so it's really nice. Not to slag too much, but it's very, you sort of have to be like, look, they can be a doctor. I've put them in a lab coat, and here they are in this thing. But that's incredible.
Yeah, and if you have shots, we talked about this earlier, right? If you need background actors, or if you have already the scan of the actor, but it's for a shot that they're going to be out of focus, you're not going to really see them. I mean, it kind of sucks for the actor because they're not getting paid for that day. But for an independent filmmaker, if you're trying to figure out where you can save some dollars,
Well, this is an interesting part of this conversation, and sort of like this is where we're headed next. But so I'll sort of pick up on that in terms of like, there's a lot of conversation these days, obviously, around using tools like AI, and AI has also become just this blanket term that sort of gets thrown around, that it's like anything is labeled AI is nefarious and terrible and should be thrown into the pits of hell forever. But the truth is, of course, we've been using all kinds of artificial intelligence for a long time in production, and that there are differences obviously between machine learning and tween frames and things like that versus engines that are taking lots of art from other artists, and then people are just using that to create derivative works. And so I guess, in the case of background performers, we were saying we have a project coming up that's an animation project that is a mix of 2D animation as well as some other live capture, rotoscoping, and we're using various programs to achieve this look, because the story is based in like medieval Italy, and it's about this old witch character, and she gets, she's like a Christmas witch, and she gets captured by a bunch of children and is put on trial because they're tired of getting coal in their stocking and they want to banish her. And so it's sort of inspired a bit by Rashomon in the sense that we have different tales of this witch, and we wanted them to be in a different style of animation. And also we're working on a budget. And, animation is not an inexpensive art. So when we were talking about this earlier, there was such relief in us of being like, this crowd of children perhaps could be not a bunch of actual children we bring in. And
30 years ago, that would be cardboard cutouts.
It's true.
In the back row.
Yeah.
And so this is just a digital cardboard cutout, so it's environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
That's what we'll say.
We won't think about the electric car.
That's correct, yes.
Don't-
The carbon
we just-
footprint of all of the, that's right.
It's all
correct.
solar-powered.
Which is-
Solar-powered children.
Yes. But, as certain elements get more and more expensive, there are ways to save, cost-wise. And I like to think that, yes, maybe that actor isn't there for that day, but there are other people working to make that image happen. So it's complicated. We're at a complicated time, an interesting time, I think, for sure. Does this come up at all for you as you're teaching any of this, or?
Yeah, I mean, the ethics behind it, absolutely. I think we've all heard stories of actors, especially people like just trying to kind of break in, maybe signing away their likeness in perpetuity, and not knowing that that's what they're doing.
Yes.
So that issue comes up. I think we had C. Craig Patterson and Eric Weaver, who worked on the short film called Fathead that was shot on Amazon stage. And the world that C. Craig had made was like this junkyard kind of post-apocalyptic world. And most of the actors on that film were children. And so because it was a junkyard, like the idea of like shooting on an actual junkyard with kids was not was not going to work. So some of their performers, they were metahumans, that the ones that were like further off in the background that you couldn't see, that would have been in like a dangerous situation, similar to your car chase scene. Like you're also considering that it's not just a budgetary thing, but also in terms of safety.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating. So I'll show you a little bit of some tests we've been doing, and Matt will chime in because we're directing it together. So we shot a film. You're going to see some footage from a film we shot a couple of years ago called Six Guns for Hire. It's a post-apocalyptic Western on the topic. And so we started at first playing with just filters. So what you're going to see in this first clip is a scene that we shot on green screen. The two actors you're seeing were not on set at the same time. We shot them separately, and then they were composited together in post. And then this footage then was completely rendered and finished in a very different style than you're going to see right now.
And kind of to your point, when you wanted to make it look realistic, do all the compositing, and then put a layer of jank on top of it.
Yes.
And you can't see where the composites are.
Yes, exactly.
So in this case, the jank is the sort of watercolor filter, which gives it a bit of a Loving Vincent, Scanner
that sort of
Darkly
style.
kind of vibe.
Yeah, so this is a footage with green, but then we have matte paintings behind it. So this is the full thing. You're not just seeing it on green, you're seeing a background as well. And a filter is on top of all of that. So we can play it now.
What I've been doing. Nobody notices what I'm deprived of. Nobody ever does.
So this was our way of testing out, what would it be like to do this treatment in terms of like, we'll shoot it on green and then get the matte painting in there and then see what it's like to treat all of that footage as one. It's pretty exciting because you get a real sort of fulsome feel to it. So I don't know. This is all very experimental. We're not sure what we'll use. Perhaps you will tell us what you like. The next clip you're going to see is some footage that we shot on green for another movie in this. Matt makes movies in a universe called the Six-verse. They're all post-apocalyptic Westerns.
There's 6 Reasons Why, there's 6 Days to Die, there's 6 Guns for Hire.
That's
there's
right.
6 Swords to the Sun,
Yeah.
6 Swords to the Shadow. There's a lot of sixes.
There's a lot of sixes.
Involved.
Yes, in the Six-verse, naturally. But so this is the footage we shot on green of this character. So we'll just watch that. And that's kind of it. And then Matt then took this, did some painting on a Wacom tablet over it in a style, and fed EB Synth some keyframes. And then we'll watch the next clip of what sort of that test is like. So again, this kind of natural style, this like Scanner Darkly, Loving Vincent style. And what we're learning in using this is that, the experiment is like, how many keyframes do we have to give it? How much of the scene do you have to feed it? And what's interesting is there's a part where she turns her head, and we had not given it any information about that.
Help you when she gets to the other side.
And it's like, it's not very complete. But it's exciting because what it allows us to do is hire artists. In this case, Matt really wanted to do some of the visual work himself. He's a visual artist as well, and that was really important to him. It allows him to do that at a scale that he wouldn't be able to do. Like, it would take us 5 years to make the movie, right? And this way, he's able to to do that himself. And then we're using another technique as well, where we work with an artist from Brazil, who's our illustrator, who's doing all of our character designs. And so for one of the styles in the film, we want to use a program that's going to allow us to, feed that program her style, put in the footage, and then it will give us that animation.
Because AI works through databases, basically. So when you go onto a generative AI platform and you type in, Kurosawa style and Akira style, like it's just grabbing from everything that's been dumped into that robot, and then the AI gives you something based on that data set. And so you can feed it footage of what you want the person to do, and you can feed it a Kurosawa movie, and then it'll give you that art style in this on top of this footage. But then you've just stolen Kurosawa's movies.
Yeah.
So we're excited about having our own data set be what the database works with, our own art. And so you're using the power of AI, but you're not stealing from anyone. It's all a part of the artistic soup, and it just comes out in the shape you want it to.
Yeah, because we are hiring animators for some of the scenes, and they will be drawing, and that will be more traditional. Even there's probably tween frames that Oshi will use, our animator Oshi, to be able to accomplish that work. So it's about how do we take the creativity and the talents of an artist, and how do we use this technology to actually help them bring that to fruition, as opposed to stealing other people's work. It's a great tool in this case for our budget to be able to create something that we otherwise, if we weren't able to use this, we do not have the resources. I mean, we're not Pixar and we're not Disney, and we just don't have that money.
Yeah, the movie just wouldn't be made.
The movie just wouldn't, or it would become a, this is a 5-year-long passion project we do on the side, because we can't actually devote, time, and we can't hire those animators. So it's a conversation we are having all the time in terms of our workflow, of where is the line between this being a helpful, interesting, useful tool and this being a theft or problematic. And to your point about actors, I, as an actor, it's complicated too, because it's like, I don't want someone taking what I look like forever and ever and never paying me for it. It's truly a terrifying, concept.
Yeah, and animators don't want their skill set to be a filter on a machine.
Right.
In fact, the concept of rigging that we're used to for 30 years of CGI, when hand-drawn animators saw what Pixar was doing, they're like, no, you have to have the skill to know what this looks like in 47 frames. That's a skill. That's not a rig. And then it's become a rig. You can just tell the robot to do this now. And it used to be that you would draw every frame. And so the line of where the artist is thrown out and the robot takes over is fine on Frozen. But as soon as it's Late Night with the Devil and there's 3 flyer frames made the
controversial.
things you can imagine, people are like, throw it in the river forever. And it's like, I don't know, man. Is that all it is?
I think one of the things that also in the conversation about AI, and I think it's related to that as well, that I think it's part of the conversation that a lot of us who are thinking about this and working in this, and I'm sure you guys probably have this conversation as well, is that there is a big difference between the sales pitch for AI and the reality of generative AI.
Yes, indeed.
One of the things that I think came out, I want to say like a month ago maybe, that I didn't see get talked about nearly enough was there was like a big, a lot of talk about how, that Sora video AI thing, they did like a whole sequence that was like a minute long or something. I don't remember what it was. I usually ignore when that stuff comes up. But they're like, and it was amazing, and they didn't have to use any traditional VFX techniques. And then 3 weeks later, somebody's like, no, they had to use a bunch of traditional VFX techniques to fix it almost the entire thing, because, and I think this is what's great about what you guys are doing and training it and building it yourself, instead of taking like these data sets that exist, and they are being fed by data sets, and we talk about it as generative when, you know, that kind of is, but it's not really generating anything, it's kind of repurposing things, which isn't bad necessarily.
If you pay for the thing.
As long as you pay for the things.
Right,
There's
yeah.
that side of the ethical, but I just mean in the technical side of it isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like, it doesn't really know the difference between, or how this thing should actually function. You still need a person there. And, you know, there's the sales pitch for it, and this is part of, you know, larger problems with honestly, like startup culture and tech culture, which is there, and, you know, honestly, my line personally is every startup, every tech CEO is just a shade of Elizabeth Holmes. It's just how much are they lying to you about what their thing can do, and how dangerous is that to human life? For most of them, it's not that dangerous to human life. It's mostly just going to put most of us out of a job for something that doesn't actually do what it's do such a great thing. Like, let's be honest, like, are Uber and Lyft really that much better than cabs? It's a little bit more convenient, but now it costs more. And how much of what they're doing is just subsidized by VC money? All of it.
All of it, yeah.
Nothing is sustainable, and nothing's meant to be sustainable. So it's always good to take these with a grain of salt. Generative AI, like what you're doing, I think, is really what all of us should be thinking about with it, which is there is a scaffolding, there's a structure to this tech, and it's really good. Like, it can do things, and if we learn how to put in the right inputs, first of all, with, as you're doing, like we're putting in styles, we're putting in like, here are the characters, and training it on this is what all these pieces are, and then get really good at talking to it. There was a presentation I was at, you probably saw it, it was at the Zero Space thing, the Framestore one, where they were talking about the use of AI. Framestore, big VFX and does a lot of this stuff. You know, they talked about they're incorporating aspects of this into their workflows, but it's not, they were very clear about, like, it is not doing most of it. It's doing this sliver of it, and it's helpful and it's useful for different things, but you have to do, in a lot of ways, you have to take what you're doing intuitively as an artist, right? You have to take the thought process, you have to take feedback, the way that, like, you're interacting with a client or an actor or a cinematographer, and you have to take all of that and turn it into words that the computer can understand. And it's hard enough to get people to understand me sometimes. The computer has a much more limited, like, I can't tell the computer, hey, remember we were talking about this thing a week ago? And that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And a person who has put up with me for 12 years gets that. Or I can show them a reference, or we can talk about something shared, or we have that experience of having worked together. The computer can't do that. I gotta, like, figure out how to prompt it right.
Yeah.
And there's a big gap to bridge there. And I think, what was it called again? The Late Night with the Devil. Like those, I was looking for those because I'd heard about it, and then I finally watched it. And I was like, it was one of those things where, like, people were really upset about it, and then I saw them and I'm like, they're really upset about that. And I understand being upset about using it. From a production standpoint, I'm like, get an art student to do that cheap. Like,
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I think they were just playing with it to see what it could do.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was.
This was a while ago, too.
Yeah, this was like over a
Right?
year ago.
Yeah.
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 It's way before people were talking about this in the dialogue of what AI should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite description of what AI should be doing is that it should be letting artistic people avoid the tedious work, not letting tedious people avoid the artistic work.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
That to me
great.
is really the key.
Yeah.
Like,
Or like I want it to like wash my dishes and like do my laundry so I can make my art, not make my art so I have to wash my dishes and do my laundry.
Exactly.
You know?
If it could answer my phone for me, that would be
Yeah,
great.
right?
But actually, one of the other things that I think is handy about generative AI, and I wonder if it's something that you're exploring in some of the things that you're doing, because it's, AI is driving a lot of those tools that you're using. They're separate, but they're very similar. Like, how much of, especially like the motion capture stuff is kind of, is like leveraging AI for bridging those gaps and things?
Yeah, a lot of the markerless motion capture. I think, at Zero Space, Elena gives a great presentation on, they have their Vicon motion capture system, right? Which is traditional. And then they use Capture and Move AI, which is AI-based motion capture. So yeah, a lot of these like free systems, that's what they're using. I think for me, one of the key considerations, especially when I'm thinking about the ethics behind it, and what I love about your project is that in a lot of these tools, unfortunately, there's a lack of transparency, where they're not necessarily sharing how things are how the data set is trained or what it's trained on. I think Adobe Firefly says that the work, that its data sets are pulled from pieces that people have given permission to use, but most other tools aren't really being that transparent about it. So it's definitely tricky, but because they are tools that can empower folks who might be limited in terms of budget or access, it's complicated. I don't have like a cut and dry answer.
I don't think there is one, I think that's where we're at right now, where it's very nuanced, and unfortunately we don't really have nuanced conversations, certainly not on the internet, but where a lot of these conversations are happening, we don't really traffic in, nuance or complication. It's very much, you're on this side or you're on that side. I think to your point, Sean, about the way it's pitched and what it's actually doing. To me, it feels a lot like what has happened with CGI and VFX in general. And this is to your point too, about everything looking the same. I think like part of what happens is it gets into the hands of these CEOs and these corporations who are really just looking to exploit and to save money and cut costs wherever they can. And then, everyone starts talking about how terrible all CGI is and all VFX are, and isn't it great when they use no VFX and no CGI, even though most of the time it's not true. It's like, no. Chris Nolan used VFX. Yeah. There's no way that didn't happen.
Chris Nolan just doesn't know when he's looking at a VFX. Chris Nolan is routinely tricked by his visual effects guys.
It's true.
Really, they're like, Chris isn't going to like this Batman, but if we don't tell him it's digital, he'll love it.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
And the truth is if some of those people knew how much of Scorsese's movies of the last 15 years were just digital, like how much of what Wolf of Wall Street is digital. He doesn't, that house doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's a door. Like somebody was telling me a few years ago that they were driving around and Scorsese liked a door, but it was on some house that looks nothing like the house in the movie, and so the rest of the house is digital.
Right. Perfect. Well, there you go. Scorsese gets what he wants, and I don't have a problem with that.
It's true. He gets to do that.
I think too, when we're talking about the ethics of it, the other complication for me is we know people who work in big VFX houses, and the amount of exploitation that's happening from a labor standpoint when you're hiring humans, but you are severely underpaying them and running them into the ground, and they are all leaving the industry because they can't take it. It's like there's a larger conversation to be had about exploitation across the board, and this definitely fits in, I think, into that conversation. But again, it's happening in so many ways that we're only beginning to really wade into the deeper implications of it.
Nobody cared watching a Marvel film if the visual effects artists were treated like indentured servants. They only cared when it started to look like crap. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, there's a whole backstory of why this movie doesn't look as good as the last 5. And
Yeah.
then the pivot has to happen. And it's not like the pivot is to a living wage.
No.
The pivot is just to like a bit less in the pipeline, so it doesn't look like.
And hopefully people not blaming them, because that's always
Right?
like,
Oh,
of
it's
course you
brutal.
get, somebody was reminding me about Cats, which,
Yes.
you know.
The thing that started the whole pandemic? The film that
Yeah.
that caused...
Listen, if it means I don't have to watch another Tom Hooper movie.
Amazing.
But yeah, like at that time, as people, they were all dumping on the VFX guys did a terrible job. Yeah, it's the VFX guys, not that you gave them like a week and then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
ridiculous.
and Dame Judi Dench's terrifying real life hands on
Genuinely?
her cat figure.
As a horror fan, though, I have never been more frightened watching a film than, like, genuinely, I was genuinely horrified.
Yeah.
Like, there was a certain level of just, like, visceral. I went to it with friends. I went to, like, an Alamo Rowdy screening where everybody was, like, singing along. It was great. But I couldn't, because every time they were on and I could see, like, their hands would change in the same scene.
Yeah.
It's like it was furry hands. But then they're normal
Real
human
hands.
And I
Human
was just
hands.
sitting in my seat just going like, why am I, this
We-
is really making me.
Okay, this is a weird tangent. We're only going to say one more Cats thing, and then I promise I'm going to wrap that up. But we saw it in a VIP screening in like a tiny theater with maybe 20 seats with my friend Allison, who we're big musical theater fans, and we were like, what is this going to be? And the first half of the movie, we couldn't really tell if the audience was liking it or we couldn't tell what was happening. And then Judi Dench, her silhouette appeared, and suddenly you saw her as a cat, and the whole theater started laughing so hard. And we were like, okay, we're all in the same theater. We all understand that this is a crazy fever dream, and we're all on this ride together. But yeah, I mean, VFX can be used, CGI can be used for nefarious things and for positive things, you know?
My nightmares.
You can have
Depends.
Godzilla -1.
Yeah.
Where,
Oh my God.
Where
Yeah.
the visual effects are phenomenal on a very small budget, and the director was asked, how did you do this? And his answer was specificity of vision.
Mm-hmm.
When you know exactly what you want, and it helps that he has a massive visual effects background, when you know exactly what you want, you're able to communicate. My sound designer loves saying, whenever we're doing anything about music, when we're talking about music, he says, we're dancing about architecture. It's time to music about music. That's how we're going to be in the same language.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're a director who's working in visual effects, who knows visual effects, you can music about music. And that gets things to happen so much faster.
Yeah. Well, and for me as a person who came into directing not from a camera or engineer or VFX background at all, it is great that these free tools exist and that I can try things and be a part of those experiments, because I learn as a director the process and I get more proficient with the technology, which makes me such a better director when I'm working on any project that involves any of this technology. Because I think part of what's happening is films really are embracing all of this technology, and a lot of directors who are then thrust into these positions because they made a great film, a great indie film, and then Marvel says, come make this giant superhero movie, but they have no understanding of that process or that technology, and then they are thrust into a position. Because even if you're working with someone who is directing, you have a VFX supervisor or someone doing the action sequences, and you have help, you have to make so many choices, and it's so helpful to understand, these processes, even just the language of them when conversations are happening.
Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up, so I just wanted to give everyone a chance to say one last thing. If you want a tip or advice or a controversial opinion, whatever you feel like to impart as we go. If anyone has any last words. Maryann, do you have anything?
Oh, I would just say, just start making stuff, start playing with these tools. To your point, part of it is understanding and kind of getting on the same page with everyone and sharing the same language around it. I would say that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think very similar. Like, the tools that are available to learn it are extremely accessible. There are some amazing folks on YouTube. I was just watching this afternoon, Jonathan Winbush, who is like if I was currently hiring teachers and he was anywhere nearby, I would be calling him and saying, let me just give you a couple classes. Let me just give you a couple classes a week. That's it, because he's got, as somebody who has employed teachers and worked with people, like there are some really, really good ones, and there's a lot of like great resources that are available specifically for things like Unreal Engine, which is very accessible. Like I'm not running the super high-end computer that a lot of people will claim. It's I mean it's not like not a good one. It's a Mac Studio, an M2 Mac Studio. So it's not like you don't have to have the NVIDIA cards and all that. You can do a lot even with the M1 on Mac. You can do it with a laptop. Like you just scale it. Like it's accessible. And there's a lot out there that will help you learn it. So.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'd say that AI is an incredibly useful tool, and as long as you're keeping an eye on the ethics of it, as long as you're not stealing the work, we're in the Napster age right now of AI, and we're going to eventually get to the iTunes and Spotify age of AI, where licensing happens, where Scarlett Johansson will single-handedly arm wrestle these tech bros into paying artists for their work. That's how Napster was taken down. Metallica and Alanis took down Napster. So Scarlett Johansson and Taylor Swift are going to take down AI.
This is the millennial perspective for you, everybody. The elder millennial perspective.
Lars is going to help.
Yeah, I echo everything everyone said, and I really find it helpful to watch videos about how something was. For me, I'm such a visual person that watching how the deconstruction of how something was made, and then playing with these tools is great. But thank you for coming. This was a great conversation, and hope you got something out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
And you as well.
And thank you to the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival.